problem there has been highlighted not by me as a politician, but by the Governor of the Central Bank, Mervyn King. He repeatedly, a speech only 2 weeks ago, said this is a very great danger facing the economy. What this government has done, we've got a group of people together, the top people in the country who know about this, to advise us how to handle this very, very dangerous problem safely, because some of these banks have balance sheets bigger than the whole of the British economy. And if they go down, you, the taxpayer, are liable for it. So we've got to deal with it.
The woman there in the second row from the back.
We're in a financial mess, and we've been told that the only solution is to make severe public sector cuts. Can Vince tell us when the gamblers from the banking sector will pay for their part in the financial mess?
All right, let's just stick with that bit. And perhaps you'd explain why there isn't going to be a tax this time round on bankers' bonuses.
Well, we don't know that there isn't.
You're arguing for one? Are you arguing for one?
No, the Chancellor and I published a paper before the summer dealing with the real problem, which we discussed a few minutes ago, of banks not being lending to small companies, something that could potentially prevent a recovery. We have a range of options which weren't pursued by the last government, which had the opportunity to do so but didn't. A range of sticks and carrots, which do include various sorts of taxation. And as this situation evolves, we will come up with effective action to get banks lending what they should have been doing and should be doing, which is supporting the real economy.
John Redwood?
But the Labour representatives here tonight are in denial. They took this country to the verge of bankruptcy. Right. They themselves said that they had to cut spending to cut the deficit. They even legislated to do it, but they didn't tell us how they would do it, so that in opposition they can complain about any attempt to get value for money or to provide some common sense. So if you actually look at George Osborne's budget figures, instead of listening to all the spin, you will see that when Labour left office, in their last year, they spent 600 billion cash on the provision of current public services. Over the 5 years of this government, on the Treasury forecast, they will increase that by 90 billion or 15%. So the challenge to the public sector is an entirely fair one. There is going to be more cash spent. And if we do it sensibly, if we keep the costs and prices down...
in cash terms without any account for inflation...
Will you just listen to me?
You had your GDP falling.
You clearly made a complete mess when your people were in office. There is going to be more cash.
My people? I don't think the new Statesman has ever governed the United Kingdom. We'd like to, but we haven't done so far.
I think you're extremely close to the Labour Party, and you are regarded as one of their magazines. There is going to be more cash available, and the challenge for all of us in the public sector is to preserve the public services and to maximise the benefit for the extra cash. If wages go up, if prices go up, if there's too much inflation, if there's too much debt, we will have to make worse cuts. If not, we can manage it well, and that's what I want this government to do. I don't want cuts any more than you want cuts. We're only in this position because of the mess you left.
Ian?
I'm just interested that, Vince says we've got some of the best people looking at this. Part of the problem with the last Labour government is they were far too close to the banks. Most of the people who were working for them were heavily involved in the very practices that led to this huge financial crisis. I mean, Gordon Brown opened Lehman Brothers Bank and delivered an hour peon about how brilliant they were. You lot cannot pretend that you weren't right up there with the bankers.
Yeah.
That's now ancient history. We are there. What we would like the coalition to do is not appoint exactly the same people again to be your advisors.
They're not the same.
Well, you've had Bob Diamond in running one of these banks. You've got Stephen Green. You've got a lot of bankers still in there, still hugely influential and still dictating.
Okay. There is a very serious problem with bank lending. And one of the things we have to recognise is that if we carry on demanding more and more prudence, if we tax the size of bank balance sheets, they will lend less. If we demand they have more cash and capital, they will lend less. And there has to be a balance. And I think we are in danger now of lurching from far too easy regulation under Mr. Brown in 2006-07 much too tough, and that's why we're not getting the bank lending in the market.
John, you mentioned far too easy regulation. In 2007, you published a report for the Conservative Party in which you said, I quote, "We see no need to continue to regulate the provision of mortgage finance.
Absolutely right.
As it is the lending institutions rather than the client that is taking the risk."
Exactly
the whole
right.
report said, let's get rid of regulation, let's get rid of business red tape.
If you read on, it said regulate the cash and capital.
John, you couldn't be any more wrong on the issue of regulation.
Okay, he was wrong, but so was everybody else.
The report actually warned that your money policy was far too loose and you weren't regulating cash and capital properly. Right. That was what the report said. You should read the whole quote.
All right. I want to go on to another question because we've taken a quarter of an hour on that one, and we've got other political questions to come.
We don't want to demonise the bankers anymore.
I do. Some of us I do.
What were you about to say? Some of us what?
Some of us do, and that's what I was referring to. There are serious problems. They haven't yet been addressed. We're addressing them.
Well, let's see what happens.
Let us drift into this crisis.
He said we don't want to demonise the bankers. You said some of us do. Did you mean that?
Some of us did and referred to it, and there are legitimate problems that we're addressing.
Right. Let's go on.
And we don't want any of the politicians playing to the gallery like Vince.
Come off it.
If you're following us and you want to take up these arguments, we're on Twitter at BBC Question Time. You can text us, 83981. CFAX page 155 will tell you what others are texting. Push the red button if you're watching digitally. And Michelle Woods, your question, please.
Yes. Can the Lib Dems survive as a political party once the coalition is over?
Can the Lib Dems survive as a political party when the coalition is over? The polls show that 52% of Liberal Democrats think they were sold out by the coalition, and 40% would have voted differently, presumably not for the Conservative. Mehdi.
I'm genuinely intrigued as to what's going to happen at the next election. As a journalist who covers politics, it's a fascinating time. None of us know what's going to happen next. I'm not sure the Liberal Democrats or Conservative High Command know what's going to happen next. You've got Conservative MPs saying there should be a merger, which stand as a coalition party. They should give each other a free run in their constituencies. And then there's others who say, no, Nick Clegg says, no, we're going to run candidates in every seat. And some other Tories say, we're going to run candidates in every seat. I'm just wondering what the Tory candidate's going to say in Sheffield Hallam about David Cameron and what the Lib Dem candidate is going to say in Whitney about David Cameron. I'm wondering what's going to happen at the leaders' debates. That'll be amusing. There's Mr. Miliband, David or Ed, we don't know yet. He'll be standing in the middle of Nick Clegg and David Cameron. And what will those two do with each other? Will they attack each other? Will they hug each other? Will they text each other? I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm genuinely confused.
So your answer to the question, will the Liberal Democrats survive, you have no answer, despite being a senior political editor.
Well, if you ask me for a guess, I think none of us know. It's like the banking crisis and the Labour leadership election. None of us quite know without peering into a crystal ball. I would suspect that they are going to get destroyed at the next election because they will be seen as the party that gave cover to all of these cuts that will decimate great cities like this one. I mean, if the economy goes well, vote Tory. If it goes badly, blame the Lib Dems.
Did I just hear a journalist say great cities like this one?
We can all play to the gallery, and we can all play to the gallery.
Vince Cable, your support at the election was 23%. It's down to 13, even 11. And you know the figures I gave you, about 52%, over half Liberal Democrats thinking they've been sold out by the coalition. How do you think the Liberal Democrats can survive?
We'll do very well. I mean, when I was first selected as a candidate in my constituency, I think our support was 3%. I don't think anybody expects it will go down quite that far, but a few days later we had doubled our number of MPs and I'd become a Member of Parliament myself. I mean, we're not getting carried away with these ludicrously volatile polls. It's utterly meaningless.
Why are they meaningless if they're simply Liberal Democrats being asked whether they approve of the coalition? What's meaningless about that?
Well, what is meaningless about it? You'd have understood this at our conference. We were told by everybody when we came to Liverpool that there was going to be a lot of acrimony and soul-searching and anger. There was absolutely nothing of the kind. Our membership has actually grown. People are not aware of that. It's grown very considerably. And the whole mood of our conference was this. People were actually proud of the fact that we had decided to work with other parties in the national interest to deal with an emergency. And the exchanges on the previous question just completely failed to grasp how serious this financial emergency is. I mean, Caroline seemed to be under the impression that we don't have a deficit problem.
Rubbish.
It is horrendously difficult.
Now, you're off on the first question again.
Well, the last Labour government were going to cut our budgets by 20%. That's what you were going to have to face. it is because it is such an enormous problem that parties have to work together in the national interest.
Yeah, but why?
And that is what we're doing.
But how do you think the Liberal Democrats can survive as a political party, given that they've now joined in coalition and given the figures of people's objections to that?
Can I
we
answer
will survive as an
If he doesn't
independent
answer,
party.
you can answer
We
it.
will survive as an independent party. We have a distinct philosophy and politics. We expressed them this week. There are areas within
Why
the
has
coalition.
the Tory vote gone up in
Well,
in
we're
popular
talking about
terms?
3 or 4 months into a